Okay, good afternoon, and apologies for the slight delay. Wouldn't be a webinar without some IT issues to get things started, but certainly appreciate everybody joining us. This webinar, we hope will bring cleaner air and trucks to the South Bronx. And I'm Matt Tomic, President of Energy Vision. We're quite pleased to co-host the event with partners at Empire Clean Cities, as well as the New York City Department of Transportation. And over the next hour, you will hear from many leaders and experts, but ultimately the webinar has three primary goals. The first is to stress the importance of moving medium and heavy duty truck fleets away from the polluting high carbon diesel fuel in New York City for all the reasons that New York State Senator Biaggi, who represents Hunts Point, and Cecil Corbin Mark from We Act will briefly discuss. The second is really to educate fleets operating in the South Bronx about the funds that are now available to buy new clean trucks. And Susan McSherry, head of alternative fuels at New York City DOT, will go over the exciting new round of clean truck funding that was just made available. The third goal is to educate fleets as well as community groups, local leaders, and others about a promising clean truck option that's now available in Hunts Point. And that's the use of clean, low carbon, and virtually pollution-free renewable natural gas made from organic waste. I'll give you a little bit more background on this option, but you'll also hear from Mark Riley at Clean Energy Fuels, which has built a new RNG station in Hunts Point. You'll hear from Juan Corsino, Fleet Director at Manhattan Beer. He'll briefly discuss the company's experience in moving from diesel to natural gas over the past 20 years. And then Joy Gardner, who's helped host this and put it together, Executive Director at Empire Clean Cities, will introduce the support and the resources that her organization can provide to fleets interested in making this shift to clean trucks. Just a bit of housekeeping first. We will have a Q&A session and a recording of the webinar will be made available to all attendees. But now let me introduce Energy Vision's founder, Joanna Underwood, who will provide some really important context as to why this initiative is so important, especially right now. So Joanna.
Hello, this is Joanna Underwood. I'm very pleased that we have so many attending this session today. We're holding this webinar, as most of you surely know, at one of the most unsettled periods in this city's, and in fact, this country's history. That history has been fraught with political, racial, and health issues that have most severely impacted communities of color. The South Bronx community has suffered long from poor housing, education, health care, food deserts, fewer economic opportunities, and the chronic stresses of living with racial bias. In particular, it suffered disproportionately from air pollution from the concentration of waste facilities nearby and high bus and truck traffic on its thoroughfares, which has lowered air quality and impacted Bronx residents' health. Today, our eyes have been opened really more than ever to EJ communities and communities of color suffering unequally from coronavirus, partly because of lower air quality and higher rates of underlying respiratory illness. Children in the South Bronx have rates of asthma almost twice the national average. With protests against racism sweeping the country now, we feel that for us, the way to confront and respond to the despair and anger swelling up is to come together and try to tackle the manifold deep-seated problems one by one. Environmental justice and the racial dimensions of pollution and its public health threats is a big one. Most important today, we hope to take a step forward toward cleaner, healthier air for the Hunts Point section of the South Bronx by taking hundreds of diesel trucks off their streets so residents can breathe easier. And because they're much quieter, they can sleep better. Compared to diesel, the clean truck technology we're going to talk about cuts health-damaging chemicals and particulates to near zero, and it's commercially available. It's ready to go right now, not just on the horizon. Making the decision to deploy it is a matter of principle. It's not just about technology, that's there. It's about what we care about and what kind of country we want to live in. We're glad to have more than 100 participants today and hope you all will find ways to work with us, taking action on this great opportunity to shape a better future. I would like now to introduce State Senator Alessandra Biaggi. We are especially pleased to have her join us. She is the granddaughter of late Congressman Mario Biaggi. She represents 34 District, which includes Hunts Point in New York. She's the chairman of the Committee on Ethics and Internal Governance. She's a graduate of NYU and Fordham Law School, where she was a member of the Fordham Law Review. And I would like to add, she is a rising star in the Democratic Party. So, Senator Biaggi, thank you for joining us. Let me turn it over to you.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, it was not letting me unmute. I apologize for that. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to join everybody, and I really just always want to begin with gratitude and my sincere gratitude for Energy Vision for including me and reaching out to include me in today's webinar, for organizing this event despite all of the circumstances that surround us, as well as to every single one of the panelists who are working very hard, tirelessly, to create a greener New York. And I say that really very earnestly, because it is one of the most important things I believe that we can do as leaders, as organizers, and as policymakers in the state. You know, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alessandra Biaggi. I represent the 34th State Senate District. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for saying those kind words. I am in my first term as a New York State Senator, but a lot of the issues that we deal with every day are not new to me. And you know, when you combine that with the COVID crisis, I think that it has illuminated what's important and what our priorities need to be. You know, the COVID crisis has brought enormous devastation into the state of New York, into many of our communities, and especially into the Bronx. The Bronx has had the highest infection, hospitalization, and death rate of any borough, stemming from the continued disinvestment in our communities. I say that because it is very important to note that this is not an issue that just happened overnight. The pandemic only exacerbated a lot of the underlying conditions and situations and underinvestment that we already have known. It's not a coincidence that the county with the worst health outcomes, the Bronx, in the state of New York, also has a higher death rate from COVID-19. The health of the Bronx and the health of Bronx residents was in a crisis before the coronavirus. The Bronx has had terrible health outcomes because of systems of inequality that were created not just in 2020, 2019, 2018, but for decades. And those conditions continue to harm every single resident, no matter where you live. If you live in the Northwest Bronx from Riverdale all the way down to Hunts Point and the South Bronx, you can really draw a direct connection between the pollution that has poured into the communities in the South Bronx, which I represent, and the devastation that has been brought by COVID-19. Breathing in polluted air day in and day out has led to exactly the kinds of health problems such as asthma, heart disease, lung disease, all of the comorbidities that we have all learned about that make you more vulnerable during the COVID-19 pandemic are exactly the comorbidities and the issues that those who are living in the Bronx actually already live with on a day-to-day basis. You know, a recent study from the Harvard University Chan School of Public Health found that someone who has lived in an area with high levels of particulate matter is 15% more likely to die from COVID than someone who has lived in an area with 1 unit fewer of particulate pollution. So people who are exposed to high levels of pollution are more likely to develop the kinds of lung and heart conditions that make COVID more deadly. I know that I'm preaching to the choir in this regard, but it's very important to point to the statistics so we can draw those correlations, and we can also speak about these things intelligently when people are asking us questions. Because I think that when you look at a borough like the Bronx, understanding the different health dynamics are very important in order to actually fight for the things that make the Bronx a healthier borough. In many ways, COVID is really just a preview of the looming threat of climate change. Our communities were already living with the impacts of climate change and environmental racism. And I want to just say this. When you look at why that is, I really do implore everyone who is participating today to take a look at who is in the positions of leadership, making the decisions to actually underinvest in these communities, to actually take away health coverage or health insurance, to remove hospitals or shut down hospitals in communities that need them the most, that are the most unhealthy, to underinvest in schools. What does that have to do with it? Well, if you're defunding or underfunding schools, then you're not actually creating a generation that even knows how to make healthy decisions for themselves, or even knows how to educate those around them, or how to be part of the change. And so, environmental justice groups in the Bronx, like The Point, CDC, have been working to address these issues for a very long time. And it is just remarkable that we can partner with them on so many of these issues. And as many of us know, one of the particular challenges in Hunts Point, which is in the South Bronx, is the food distribution center. The Hunts Point Food Distribution Center is the largest food distribution center, not only on the Eastern Seaboard, not only in this region, but in the entire United States. And some have even argued that it is actually one of the largest food distribution centers in the world. So what does that mean? Well, you have Hunts Point, which has a high asthma rate, high diabetes rate, high lung disease and heart disease rate. And you have diesel fuel trucks coming in and out of the area, delivering food and spewing pollution into the air. Amazon is about to open a distribution center in Hunts Point as well. And according to reports recently, transport accounts for about a quarter of all US plant warming emissions, but also poses a direct health threat to about 45 million Americans who live, work, or attend school within 300 feet of roads that are shrouded in high air pollution levels. This pollution has a direct impact on the community that it serves. And one of the most challenging things that we have seen and that I have seen, and one of the biggest hurdles that I have had to work just really tirelessly to overcome, is the real lack of communication between the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center and the people who live in the community, right? So when you think about the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center, one final comment on them, they are, serving and delivering all of the food to all of the restaurants that we all attend. We're talking about fresh produce, fresh fish, fresh meat, all of the things that our restaurants are living on, and yet the people who live right outside of those walls cannot get access to a banana that is not 4 days old, 5 days old. We have to do better than this. We have to do better than this. And so what have I done? I have taken every attempt to make sure that the communication can start to flow in a meaningful way, because we have to draw relationship between those who are benefiting from the community and those who live there. For these reasons alone, I'm grateful that the Hunts Point Clean Trucks Program is in existence. It has already replaced 592 heavily polluting diesel trucks since the program's inception, and it has incentivized businesses to really think critically about the environmental impact of their operation on our communities. Anytime a new business wants to benefit from the South Bronx or just from the Bronx generally, we should be asking, as members of the community, as leaders of the community, okay, well, how can you reduce your carbon footprint? How can you make sure that as you benefit from us, that we are benefiting from you? I feel that as an elected official, and as many of the elected officials in the Bronx, we need to be more intentional about addressing the environmental impacts of pollution on the health of our communities. We cannot be silent. We cannot be, allured or drawn in by the quote unquote sexiness of a new business coming. No, that's very nice that businesses want to do business in the South Bronx and want to expand their business there, but only if it benefits the community, because otherwise we don't have the time or the luxury to increase or exacerbate the already existing conditions that have been in place since the inception of the roadways that have been built during Robert Moses, as well as the increased industrialization. You know, last year in the New York State Senate, we passed something called the CLCPA. It changed names twice, which makes it confusing for me, but it's short for the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. This was a bill that is being heralded in a good way as the strongest environmental protection act in the entire country at the state level. It was a groundbreaking and necessary first step. It creates the framework for New York to aggressively pursue net zero emissions, and it contains an air monitoring program for environmental justice communities, and to make sure that we have a high air quality standard across the board. This legislation is a type of transformational legislation and leadership that will transform our economy and require all sectors to shift to renewable energy. You know, sometimes it's not the culture that shifts the policy. Sometimes the policy has to shift the culture. And in this instance, it's actually both. When we're talking about environmental justice and the changes that need to be made, we need to pass laws to hold accountable those corporations and those entities that won't actually take the steps to do the right thing. But at the same time, we also need the community to make sure that they're pushing government to pass these policies, organizing to really make sure that their voices are heard. Last year, I introduced a bill. The bill number is S7824. This is a bill that will help combat asthma death rates in the Bronx on a legislative level. The bill is also referred to as the Lydia Soto bill. Lydia Soto was a child from the South Bronx who passed away due to her complications with asthma. Her access to healthcare and generally access to healthcare for people of color is, I'm not saying anything that nobody knows. It's hampered by socioeconomic disparities, shortages of primary care physicians in minority communities, language and literacy barriers, and cultural barriers. These clear disparities have emerged and show the burden of treatment of asthma in the communities of color. The burden of asthma falls disproportionately on the African American and Latinx populations, and especially on children. So the bill will create something called a Minority Coordinating Council on Asthmatic Affairs to address these issues, to look at the environmental factors, to improve awareness and management of asthma prevention, and to work to expand treatment for communities of color across the state. Let me just say one thing before I end here. I previously to being an elected state senator I am also an attorney. I worked as an attorney in the governor's office in his executive chamber. I worked during the 2017 legislative session. I remember having bills put before my desk that were by now my colleagues, Senator Serrano, Senator Bailey, who looked at things that were trying to understand the data on the ground, right? Looking at the asthma rates, trying to do studies so we could take that information and then act on it. And those bills were vetoed by our current sitting governor. So I want everyone to just think about that, because when we hear what's going on now and we hear a lot of our leaders talk about how, you know, it's alarming, or they're incredulous to the fact that so many communities of color are impacted in this way. These are the very same leaders who have vetoed the measures that we could have taken for precaution, for prevention. So here's the thing. The bottom line is that we must be creative. We have to move with a sense of urgency to address the environmental conditions that have made so many communities susceptible to the worst impacts of COVID. And we have to help our communities be better off than they were before this pandemic. We have an opportunity and a moral imperative to take this moment and to use it to transform our world. If we are not going to be bold now, when will we be bold? What are we waiting for? Nothing. This is it. This is the time. So anyone who's listening, who's wondering what we can do, there are so many different ways we can be active. The New York Health Act, we can make sure that we have funding into our communities. Holding accountable the people in the highest positions of power is one of the ways that we can actually deal with this. Finally, if you haven't filled out your census, fill out your census. It's very important. And lastly, make sure you vote. I don't care who you vote for, but get out there and vote. Your voice is essential. Thank you so much for having me. I am very, very excited to hear more from our panelists today.
Thank you so much, Senator Biaggi. Those were wonderful remarks, and we look forward to working with you on policies at the state level that will benefit the South Bronx and other parts of our state. I want to mention that sometimes people don't think of trucks as exciting targets of opportunity, but every truck that is converted today from diesel to this renewable natural gas available in the South Bronx are meeting the climate change goals that were set for 2050, 30 years early. This is an extraordinary moment when one company, Clean Energy Fuels, whom you will hear from, has taken the initiative of opening a refueling station that offers only renewable natural gas, not fossil gas, only this clean fuel made from waste. And whenever you use waste to make fuel, you have waste to go less into landfills. So I'd like to move ahead here and introduce Cecil Corbin-Mark, Deputy Director, Director of Policy Initiatives at We Act for Environmental Justice. He has long played a major role, not just in the New York, but in the national environmental justice movement. And we have been very thrilled to collaborate with them for many years.
I just want to thank Energy Vision for their work on this issue. I want to say ditto to many of the things that Senator Biaggi said. I also want to lift up the fact that there are really great environmental justice organizations operating right there in the Point. The Point CDC is certainly one of them that We Act has had the pleasure of working with through some New York Community Trust funded programs. I certainly take leadership from those groups that are operating on the ground. And I want to, make sure that people are aware that my presence here is not to speak for the people of the Hunts Point area. Those folks are organized by local organizers, and certainly want to make sure that they are at the forefront of this conversation. For We Act, this issue of reclaiming sort of the fuels of the fleets that operate across New York has been at the forefront of our organization's founding. Back in 1988, when we were founded around a couple of issues impacting the local communities where we organize in northern Manhattan. And one of those issues was the operation of a diesel bus fleet. And like diesel trucks, diesel buses play a significant role in terms of impacting the health of our communities negatively. And for us, this is one of the systemic issues that challenges our health and well-being, and is one of the ways in which environmental racism manifests itself. I want to be clear that communities have a right to be free from the toxins that are fueling our systems, whether they are coming from vehicular transportation, energy sources, or whether they're in our foods, or wherever those toxins may reside, in the cosmetics that we use, etc. For me and my organization, the issue of coming up with a source of fuel such as RNG that is not a fossil fuel, that eliminates the particulate matter that is coming from some of the other vehicles that are in our transportation system, is one from our perspective that represents a victory in terms of moving forward with something that can help improve the quality of the air, improve the health of the residents in our neighborhoods. And I see that as something that has been struck here as in terms of coming up with this RNG fleet. I want to just say that, for many communities of color, the levels of respiratory rates have predisposed us to the issue of COVID-19 crisis, as was discussed by Senator Biaggi. And so I just want to lift up on that point and recognize the fact that as we move forward to reopening, quote unquote, our economy, we should not be going back to business as usual. We should use every opportunity that we have to continue to benefit from the unintended consequence of the shutdown of our economy. And what is that unintended consequence that I talked about? The New York Times reported that the air quality, back in March, they reported that the air quality versus the period of March 2020 versus the period of March 2019 had drastically improved. And it had drastically improved because of the reduction of vehicular traffic on our roads. Now, that article went on to talk about the fact that that is not sustainable. Well, for communities of color, like my community here in Northern Manhattan, where I am and where my organization works and organizes, that is not the response that we should be satisfied with. And that is not the response that our political leaders, Senator Biaggi or anyone else, should be taking as acceptable. We need to find ways to move forward to making sure that the air is cleaner for our communities. Why? Because we are still in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic. Why? Because this pandemic, this coronavirus 19, was not the first respiratory pandemic that we had. Within the last 20 years, we've had SARS, we've had MERS, and now we have COVID-19. That's just in the span of 20 years. And we're not finished with COVID-19, as I said before. So the idea that it's not sustainable to have clean air in our communities is not acceptable. We have to find the ways to move our transportation systems and redesign our transportation systems in ways that are less harmful to communities, especially those where all of our essential workers reside. And so I just want to say that RNG, whether it's RNG or whether it's electrical vehicles, as in the way that Attorney General Tish James supported a program to bring electrical trucks to Hunts Point, I think all of these solutions need to be discussed with communities, need to be worked through with communities, and that we need to advance solutions that better protect communities. And so I want to say thank you to Energy Vision. I want to lift up the idea that this is tackling one of those systemic issues in our society that we have to fix and that we have to address. And that actually, while the events that have been taking place in our country over the last 8 days, 9 days, are triggered and catalyzed by the death of George Floyd, they are not only talking about the issues of policing, which have to be addressed in our country, not only talking about issues of criminal justice, but for those of us in the environmental justice movement, we've been talking about air quality as it relates to health. We've been talking about air quality as it relates to climate and our communities. And it is time that we stop avoiding dealing with the heart of these issues, the systemic racism that has pervaded in this country for far too long. And so I just want to thank the folks at Energy Vision, Joanna, Matt Tomich, for all of their work. I want to again call and lift up the Point CDC, an amazing organization that's there for folks to take leadership from in this community. And I want to call out and say thank you to all the other panelists who are on this presentation. With that, I must leave.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Cecil. With that, we're going to move into the the agenda, as it were, and I will turn it over to Susan McSherry at New York City DOT.
Thank you, Matt. As Matt said, I'm Susan McSherry. I work for New York City's Department of Transportation in the Alternative Fuels Program. And on behalf of DOT, I'm extremely pleased to announce the launch of the New York City Clean Trucks Program. This program builds on the success of the Hunts Point Clean Truck Program, which has helped reduce truck emissions in the South Bronx since 2012. We are happy to expand this program to other industrial business zones now throughout the city. But before I get any further into my presentation, I'd like to publicly thank my consultant team at Tetra Tech, GNA, and ISR for all the hard work to get us here today, and also to thank the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, who were instrumental in helping DOT secure Volkswagen diesel settlement money, which is helping to fund this program expansion. So a big thanks to you all. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so what is the New York City Clean Trucks Program? Well, it means cleaner trucks for a greener New York City and is a DOT strategic initiative to promote sustainable transportation, particularly sustainable zero-emission urban freight throughout New York City. The program does this by offering rebate incentives to retire old diesel trucks and replace them with the newest, cleanest technology currently available. New truck offerings include battery electric zero-emission vehicles or other types of alternative fuel offerings, such as compressed natural gas or diesel electric or plug-in hybrid diesel. This program also offers diesel-to-diesel replacement for smaller fleets of 14 trucks or less. Eligible applicants will be able to receive between $12,000 and up to $185,000 per truck replacement, depending on the fuel type and the truck class size. And these incentives really are meant to relieve the financial burden on companies who need trucks to deliver goods and services to New Yorkers, and to be able to lower their company's carbon footprint, take advantage of lower operation and maintenance costs on their vehicles, and to do so immediately, which improves the bottom line as well as New York City's air quality. We think it's a win-win situation. Next slide, please. As I previously mentioned, due to the availability of VW funding, DOT is now able to expand the Clean Truck Program citywide. The purpose of the VW funds is to target projects in environmental justice communities disproportionately affected by diesel emissions. And while the South Bronx has become synonymous with truck emissions, there are communities adjacent to all of these industrial business zones listed here. New York businesses can help themselves and the communities they live in and serve by taking advantage of this program funding to retire their dirty trucks early. There are eligibility requirements that applicants must meet in order to obtain the funds. First and foremost is the ability to show that they are located in or provide service within a half-mile radius of these listed IBCs. And additional details apply, and I will be able to invite you to a webinar to learn more about it in just a moment. Next slide, please. In addition to eligibility requirements regarding the location of the businesses, the truck fleet must also meet these listed program criteria. Due to the legal nature involved in prosecuting the VW diesel emission cheating scandal that was in the news a few years back, the resulting EPA consent decree is very specific as to what vehicles will be eligible for replacement. In particular, the age of the qualifying truck must fall within the 1992 through 2009 engine model year. Funds are available for truck classes 4 through 8, and the vehicle must be proven to have been operating within New York City for the past 24 months at a minimum. The new trucks must be brand new, never before used or registered, perform the same function, and be the same weight size as the truck it has replaced, although we do have some exceptions for downsizing on the sides of those vehicles, and essentially operate as the same way as the retired truck, by visiting the IBZs at least twice per week, or running just outside of those boundaries, and then commit to 70% of all vehicle miles traveled in the tri-state area. Next slide. So I had to keep it sort of short and sweet, but we'd like to invite you all to attend one of our 2 upcoming webinars to learn more about the New York City Clean Trucks Program. And we invite you to check us out, check out our new website, which is listed here, or to email our program team at the email listed as well. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Susan, and congratulations on the launch of the program. I know it's been a long time coming and a lot of hard work put in by a lot of folks that you made reference to. So, you know, one of the main topics here today is something that Energy Vision has been looking at for a long time. But before that, just to put this in context, you know, at Energy Vision, we do really focus on identifying and promoting the fuels that will be truly sustainable. And that means zero or near zero pollution and zero or near zero greenhouse gases. And among those options now available to New York City fleets to move away from diesel, for all the reasons we've heard so much about here in the great introductory remarks, renewable natural gas, or biomethane as some call it, has great promise. This is a fuel and technology that we began exploring in 2008 when we were really impressed by the environmental benefits and the ability and opportunity to transform organic waste that we produce in every urban and rural area into a valuable resource. We hosted the first workshop on the topic in 2010 with Department of Energy, and we've convened a number of regional workshops since then highlighting that these materials aren't waste at all. They're actually nutrient and energy-rich resources. Next slide. So in looking at the availability of resources that are thought of as waste, you can see here that they're plentiful in urban and rural areas, as I mentioned. And renewable natural gas, or RNG, is nearly identical to conventional gas, so it can be used in the same vehicles or equipment, but it's much better. It requires no drilling or fracking since it's made from these abundant streams of organic waste. As you can see here, food waste, wastewater, manure, and waste in place at landfills are the primary sources. And the biogases that are emitted by these existing sources actually account for nearly half of the human-induced methane emissions in the country. And methane, as we know, is 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year time frame. Next slide. So organic waste can be transformed into vehicle fuel in a few fairly simple steps. First, the organics are collected and processed in tanks called anaerobic digesters, where this methane, instead of being vented to the atmosphere and contributing to climate, is captured and in a very safe and secure way. Once it's captured, those gases can be cleaned up, remove moisture and any impurities, which ends up with RNG that can be then used in vehicles, either on site where the fuel is produced or delivered to fueling stations, as will be the case with the new Hunts Point station. Next slide. Energy Vision has been tracking all operational and under development RNG projects, again, in collaboration with the Department of Energy. There are now 105 projects making this fuel, up from just 42 in 2015. But really, the potential is far greater. If fully utilized, these waste streams, instead of being a liability, could be a great resource to produce enough fuel to actually displace all the diesel currently consumed in urban bus fleets, which would improve the air quality of millions of Americans. Next slide. And critically, from the climate perspective, the California Air Resources Board and other authorities have concluded that RNG is actually the lowest carbon fuel available today on a life cycle basis. And that's because its production and use keeps these methane gases from escaping to the atmosphere, the first big climate benefit. And it can also be used to displace high carbon diesel, the second benefit. And as you can see on the right of the chart here, when made from food waste or animal manure, you actually capture more greenhouse gases producing the fuel in the form of methane than are ever emitted by the vehicles using it. So this is known as carbon negative or net carbon negative. Climate scientists globally really recognize the need for carbon negative strategies and the need to scale up very quickly if we are to achieve the really ambitious and clearly necessary greenhouse gas reduction targets. Next slide. And RNG use in vehicles provides great benefits to public health. They cut health-threatening particulate matter immensely compared to old diesel vehicles. They also reduce smog-forming nitrogen oxides, which, as we know, cause asthma attacks, cardiovascular distress. And the transportation sector is disproportionately responsible for these harmful emissions, which, as we heard all about before, really are still negatively affecting high traffic regions, especially the South Bronx. These meaningful reductions in NOx can be delivered by battery electric vehicles, as well as by natural gas vehicles, 90% below the current EPA standard, which is tremendous. Next slide, please. And from our perspective, really important here is the fact that these vehicles are proven and broadly available. There are about 30,000 on the road today, with numerous successful deployments, particularly in urban settings. And so any fleet switching from diesel to RNG can slash its emissions profile by as much as 300% while also reducing harmful tailpipe emissions. So RNG is offering an immediate, cost-effective solution and one that's now available in New York City, which is extremely exciting to us. Happy to answer questions, but for now, I will turn it over to Mark Riley to talk more about this opportunity.
Thank you, Matt, and good afternoon. Thank you to Energy Vision the Empire Clean Cities Coalition, and New York City DOT for allowing me the opportunity to participate in today's webinar. And thanks to all of you for listening. Next slide. Trucks capable of running on renewable natural gas, or RNG, and compressed natural gas, CNG, are broadly available from major truck manufacturers in all truck classes and come in various truck chassis configurations to meet your fleet's requirements. The latest Cummins Westport medium and heavy duty engines achieve near zero nitrogen oxide emissions. And as Matt just shared, is the principal smog forming and asthma causing pollutant in transportation. As such, renewable natural gas powered fleets are not only reducing their carbon footprints, but are making our air cleaner and easier to breathe. Additionally, these new engines provide diesel-like performance and reliability. And below in my presentation is a link to NGV America's website, where you can search all the trucks available that can operate on 100% renewable natural gas. Next slide. Clean Energy was the first fuel supplier to market renewable natural gas as a vehicle fuel. We call our renewable natural gas Redeem. Redeem has become more and more available at our public access stations nationwide, including 2 facilities in New York State. Operating your truck on Redeem means you no longer have to worry about diesel aftertreatment or DEF fluid. This results in ease of maintenance and lower operating costs. Next slide. In addition to the exciting New York City Clean Truck Program that Susan just shared with us, the Clean Energy Zero Now financing program offers our customers additional financial and operational benefits for fueling with us. Depending on your truck and fuel consumption, our Zero Now program offers up to $40,000 towards the truck purchase, including exclusive truck pricing, a 5-year fuel cost certainty through either discounts or indexed off of diesel fuel. In addition, a 5-year engine warranty, which is only offered through our Zero Now program. This program is now not only available for heavy-duty trucks, but for medium-duty trucks. We just launched that edition the last couple of days. More information is available at www.cleanenergyfuels.com/Zero Now. Next slide. Now that you've purchased this truck and are capable of running on renewable natural gas, you're probably asking, where am I going to get the fuel? Our 100% renewable natural gas fueling station is in Hunts Point, and it is the first of its kind in New York City. It is optimally located within the Hunts Point market and is designed to fuel vehicle types, all vehicle types, with up to 53-foot trailers. The station is open Monday to Friday, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, 5 a.m. to 1 p.m., and closed on Sunday due to New York City Fire Department restrictions. To purchase RNG at the station, fleets will need to sign up for a Clean Energy Fuel Card, as this is the only allowable payment method at this time. The application for a Clean Energy Fuel Card account is available on the Clean Energy website. Next slide. Okay. In addition to the Hunts Point renewable natural gas station, your trucks can also access compressed natural gas at 8 other locations throughout New York City. And actually, many of them are within the industrial business zones for which the Clean Truck Program is applicable. These stations are operated by Clean Energy and by others. And then beyond New York City, easily accessible CNG fueling stations are located throughout the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. Next slide. And I just want to thank you all for your attention, and please don't hesitate to contact me by email with any questions, or obviously ask them here in the webinar. I look forward to working with all of you to transition your fleets to renewable natural gas. Matt, back to you.
Okay, terrific. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Juan Corsino, who, as I mentioned at the start, is the fleet director at Manhattan Beer Distributors and has overseen their long shift away from diesel to natural gas. So Juan, you're up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before I start, let me say to Alessandra Biaggi that my daughter went through similar case as Lydia Soto. At the age of 3, I didn't have time to wait for an ambulance. I threw her in my car and drove straight to the hospital, and I was lucky that she made it. She suffered asthma and she stopped breathing and was actually breathing just with her chest. No air was coming out of her system. It was a really bad asthma attack that I got really scared. I didn't think she was going to make it. Thanks God today she's out of asthma. She's recovered 100%. To start my presentation, I want to say that Manhattan Beer is committed to sustainability. Our focus is to give back to our drivers, customer, and community. A little bit about Manhattan Beer. Next slide, please. Manhattan Beer Distributors is the largest single market beer distributor in the United States. We delivered 45 million cases to 27,000 customers a year. We covered over 3 million revenue miles on 400 heavy duty trucks. After we start the CNG project that we started in 2002 to help cleaning the air in Hunts Point, my first 2 children born with asthma. That was the motivation to continue with the CNG project and start to work with the OEM like International and Volvo to develop medium and heavy duty CNG trucks. Since 2002, we have upgraded our fleet and replaced 41% of our diesel trucks with CNG trucks. That's about 167 trucks and tractors today. Next slide, please. So that photo is the Hunts Point CNG station, which is renewable CNG station. Since trucks are equipped to work with CNG or RNG, we are taking advantage of the clean energy station, and we are using the clean energy station for 3 of our facilities. Queens, Brooklyn, and some of the Bronx trucks are using the clean energy stations here in Hunts Point and in Maspin, New York. Thank you, Clean Energy, for making that possible. It was a long-term project. I waited for it for many years, but it's there today, and we are using it. Next slide, please. So aside of the benefit and the environmental benefit that we get from CNG trucks, there are other advantages of using natural gas versus diesel. On diesel trucks, we have many challenges, keep them running with the new technologies. CNG does not require emission technology. The price is about 40% cheaper than diesel. Even today, the diesel is very low. CNG is still cheaper, and it requires less maintenance, less oil changes being serviced, and it's less parts that can go wrong. So the truck is much more reliable and doesn't break down as much as diesel trucks do. And that makes us much more efficient making our delivery. Other benefits are that in the cold weather, they don't have the problem that you have on the diesel trucks. They don't require to heat up for a long time, and they don't yield up with the cold weather, so they're much more efficient during the cold days. Require less warm-up time to provide heater to the driver. The CNG truck start heat up really quick, and you don't have to idle your trucks in the yard for 10 minutes to get heat. They have minimum engine noise. These trucks blend with the traffic in the city really easy. They are very clean look. We changed the shape of the trucks. We redesigned the trucks, and because the engine are so quiet, it blend with the traffic like as if it was a car. We actually did a test. We record videos where we send trucks into R2 Avenue in the Bronx and 42nd Street in Manhattan. And these trucks are not calling people attention, how all the trucks are making noise and fumes coming out of the trucks, and everybody's looking at those trucks. So it blends pretty easy in the community. I just mentioned is the fuel prices and the reliability of these trucks. They are very reliable because you don't have to worry about winter storm. You will not get your fuel. We are direct pipe. We own 3 CNG stations, and we haven't had any issue in the past 15 years since we went to OEM. After we started with retrofit, we moved to OEM, and the OEM are doing a very good job making this truck better every day. Next slide, please. So I really want to tell everybody that what we did in the past was hard to do. I think today everybody can do what we did. It's much easier, cost efficient, and it's a lot of help from government, Homes Point Clean Truck Programs, and every program out there, the VIP program. There are many programs out there to help fleet to convert to natural gas or to electric or to any alternative fuel. I think everybody should jump on this and don't wait for others to do what you want for your children, for the future. The future is on your hands. You should start looking at what you can do yourself and pull the trigger on upgrading your fleets. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Joy Gardner with Empire Clean Cities. I'm here to send us off and then into the Q&A. But briefly, I just want to introduce our organization and talk about some additional resources that we have for our fleet and community partners. Just a quick background, where Empire Clean Cities is a nonprofit environmental organization, and we're also the designated U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities Coalition for the New York City metro area and the lower Hudson Valley region. We're part of a national network of over 100 local coalitions that have helped place nearly 1 million alternative fuel vehicles across the country. If you're located outside of the New York City area, I encourage you to be in contact with your local Clean Cities Coalition. Some of the things we do is we help connect fleet partners with fuel providers, industry partners, and resources. We offer training and access to technical assistance. We identify funding and incentive opportunities, and we provide education and outreach to decision makers, fleets, and the public, similar to today's webinar. We also help collect and analyze regional data, and we participate in alternative fuel corridor planning. So just quickly, a couple of tools that we have available if you're thinking about making the transition to alternative fuels. One of the sort of quick calculators that the Department of Energy has developed is on the right, and you can enter in your current information, and you can see how much cost savings you'll get through the AFDC, and the link is there. And we'll also be sending around these slides after the webinar, so you'll have that as well. For a more in-depth analysis, you can contact Empire Clean Cities or your local Clean Cities Coalition about their Green Fleet program, and they can help fleet managers calculate life cost cycle savings and emissions reductions, and also provide you with some public recognition for improving air quality in your region. Here are a couple other additional resources. I know Mark had mentioned a vehicle search tool. There's also one through the Department of Energy, the AFDC website. It's there, and again, we'll be sending this around. There's also a station locator, so if you go beyond the New York City region, you can find other fueling stations where you can fuel your new alternative fuel vehicle at. You can visit our website for funding and incentive opportunities similar to the New York Clean Trucks Program. And you can also find some additional information on RNG and other alternative fuels at the AFDC site. And again, we'll be sending these around after the webinar, so you'll have these links in your inbox soon. So thank you again, and this is our contact information. I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about any stage in the your alternative fuel planning process. So now we're going to, that concludes the webinar, and thank you everybody so much for joining, and we will, I realize that we're a little bit over time, but we'll be answering your questions as they come in, so please feel free to type them into the question and answer box, and for those that we don't get to, now we'll be sending around along with the recording of the webinar and the slides. So I'm going to send it over to Lydia Henderson, our Research and Marketing Coordinator at Empire Clean Cities, and she'll be reading off the first questions.
Thanks, Joy. Hi, everyone, and thank you to everyone for joining us today, and another thank you to our panelists. The first question we have, I'm going to direct to Susan McSherry at NYC DOT. The question is, what is the application deadline for the NYC Clean Trucks Program?
Sorry, thank you again, everyone, for excellent presentations and some very inspiring words by Cecil and the Senator. To answer the first question, there is no application deadline, which is the best part about how these programs are currently structured. We have approximately $3 million available for rebates right now, and I encourage any fleet who is interested in participating in the program to please be in touch with the program administrators and to visit the website to learn more about the program and some of the specific requirements and changes. There are some subtle changes between the program as it stands now and how the Hunts Point Clean Trucks Program had been operating. So it's important that everybody just gets educated about that. But the deadline is just until the funds run out, basically. So you know, I encourage everybody again to take a look, to start to fill out applications, and try to get your place online and get a new truck.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. The next question, I think, Juan, I'm going to direct this to you. The question is, have you considered integrating other forms of renewable energy strategies, such as solar, into the operations of your fleet?
Yes, solar is part of what we are doing now. 2 of our buildings are complete. We are on our 3rd building. We have about 700,000 square feet of solar as we speak. Our headquarters in the Bronx in Hunts Point is 100% solar. It's been on for about 3 years. We just did last summer with the Sofa in New York, 2 buildings there, about 200,000 square feet. And we are doing our MASPE facility that should be ready this summer, probably by July. So we are on the process of converting all our roof to solar, with the exception of Brooklyn that run on a cogen plant. We generate our own energy there.
Great, thank you. And Juan, while we have you on the line, then this next question could be for you too. The question is, have you considered to convert existing trucks into RNG?
Our trucks all run on RNG. The CNG trucks run either with fossil fuel or renewable natural gas. We are using the clean energy station on the trucks that does not require any change. We just drive to the station, fill it up, and they run the same with either or the alternative fuel. So the next step is to upgrade to renewable natural gas on our privately owned station, and that's something that I am in the process of doing.
Thank you so much. Matt, I think we can direct this question to you. It's how might community composting serve as a feedstock for RNG?
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrific question, and typically the digester facilities that are producing RNG are of a certain scale. For example, the Newtown Creek wastewater facility operated by DEP has just begun or will soon begin producing RNG fuel, likely to be used in transportation. Community scale composting is terrific, and we are quite distressed about the fact that funding for the collection and processing of that material is at risk under the city's budget, and we're part of a diverse and broad coalition fighting to make sure it's reinstated. I would say, at the core, getting these materials out of landfills should be the top priority. And whether it goes to local processing facilities or to larger, more central facilities, those are both great options and far superior to what's mostly happening today.
Great, thank you.
Mara, still on the conference call?
The next question that we have coming in is, does the supply of RNG meet the projected demand for CNG trucks? Is there a desire for hybrid CNG and electric trucks? Matt, I don't know if you can take that one as well.
I would kick that to Mark if he's still around. Looks like he is.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to go between the two questions here. Yeah, does the supply of RNG meet the projected demand for CNG trucks? Today, RNG supply is growing and expanding. As Matt showed, we went from 40-something projects to 105 projects in North America. And as that supply is coming online, more and more fleets are desiring to purchase the renewable natural gas. We're supplying major fleets all across the country with RNG, including UPS, Republic Services, and as more supply comes online, we're also supplying our 150 public access stations across North America with renewable natural gas. So, as more supply comes online, more of the stations we operate in New York City will also be receiving renewable natural gas exclusively.
Thank you, Mark. Susan, this next question is for you. It's with the NYC Clean Trucks Program, are they offering funding for charging infrastructure for electric trucks?
Right. No, the mitigation plan that New York State set up in response to the receiving the VW funding and the allocation of that VW consent decree funding actually splits up these mitigation action items separately. So the funding that we received is specifically for trucks. But I think in the near future there will be the mitigation action item for EVSE or EV charging equipment purchases may become available separately with VW funding. That said, the state has some incentive programs that surround the buying down the cost of installation and acquisition of charging equipment, and the industrial business zones, which are actually operated by New York City EDC. Well, New York City EDC has reached out and done requests for information to the industry and to EVSE providers to learn more about how some equipment could be placed on EDC-owned, IBZ property, which would make fuel, a recharging, opportunity charging available for fleets who would convert to zero-emission trucks. So where we see the equipment for these fleets to be primarily located on their own property, the city is also looking at strategically locating fast charging equipment and level 2 charging equipment throughout the city that would help with opportunity charging for both trucks and actually light duty vehicles as well. So we look forward to that expansion in the near future.
Thank you, Susan. Do we still have Senator Biaggi on the line? We have a question for you from somebody working in New York City City Council and working with the mayor for multiple years to pass an electric school bus bill for the city. Knowing that New York State is the largest consumer of school buses in the nation, would you support a statewide plan to transition these old diesel school buses to all electric or zero emission school buses?
Hi, folks. The senator is on another call now, but I did want to emphasize that the senator is definitely interested in reviewing any legislation that would transport school buses to become electric or zero emissions. She believes that, if we're going to have students be safely transported, that also includes limiting their exposure to pollution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That appears to be all the questions coming in the Q&A and the chat. I encourage anyone who didn't have the chance to ask a question already to go ahead and type that in. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, if there are no other questions, I guess I'll just close it by thanking everyone again for participating, for tuning in. Special thanks to Joy and Lydia at Empire Clean Cities for hosting, coordinating, and promoting the event, as well as to Susan McSherry, New York City DOT, and Barbara Brentano at GNA. And again, the recording will be made available. We encourage folks to get in touch directly with speakers or through us at Energy Vision. And again, hopefully this was informative. We all have heard time and again for the critical need to move these old dirty diesel trucks off the road. And there are ample funding opportunities and technologies now that can enable this shift. So we'll continue to push hard to see that happen